antibody discovery companies, antibody engineering companies, and among them is AbCellera. And so it's my pleasure to be hosting CFO Andrew Booth. Andrew, great to have you at our conference.
Thanks a lot, Puneet. Pleasure to be here.
So before we, sort of get into sort of the question Q&A, maybe, Andrew, just to kick off, for those who are maybe not familiar with the story or maybe at a high level, can you tell us how AbCellera is situated in the, this growing space of antibody discovery? You obviously have a nice position in terms of technology stack. You have a strong proof point through COVID, and obviously great royalty payments on that as well over the last several quarters. So would love to hear about that first, and then we can get into, Q&A.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on a lot of that, Puneet, and just give a basic overview of the company and what are we trying to solve. So I'll first put up the regular disclaimer that probably makes some forward-looking statements, and you can please check our SEC documents for the appropriate and full disclaimer. The first an important point in setting the stage about what we're doing here at AbCellera and what we're building is we are building an antibody discovery engine that can deliver optimal clinical candidates to the clinic and to patients with greater speed and precision than legacy and conventional technology. And the hypothesis we started with when founding the business was that investments in this technology, from going from a target all the way to a drug product and the clinic, that investments in technology can improve the productivity of that process for drug development. And that is the product creation stage of drug development. We don't claim to have specific insight into target biology, nor do we claim to be able to run clinical trials more efficiently than is done by big pharma and by partners. Where we can really make a difference is in those investments in technology, and that's what we think about when we allocate capital to solving some of those big problems. The philosophy here is that by solving problems and improving the productivity of that part of the overall drug development process, with a specific focus on therapeutic antibodies, that we can create a lot of long-term value that can be levered out there into the market by being run at scale. So a very important part of our overall thesis is that we're building this engine that can then be operated at scale to deliver these therapeutic antibody products to the market. And we're doing that by investing in the teams, the technology, the experts, the infrastructure, the equipment, the capabilities that allow us to go from target to the clinic faster than anyone. We would expect at half the speed that is typically taken today. Today, that's a process that can take anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5 years. We believe we can do that in half that time and at scale. And also by the investments in technology, we can break down the barriers of conventional antibody discovery to open up these new classes of targets or finding antibodies against targets that have been previously intractable for antibody discovery. And we can do that with the highest quality and unprecedented scale. And that's how we're allocating capital, and that's what we're building. We have raised about $800 million in capital to date over the life of the company. The company just turned 10 years old. And in addition to that $800 million, we have over $150 million in government contracts and funding agreements that we have to make these investments. We've managed, because of through that financing and capital raise, both dilutively and non-dilutively, we've managed to retain very tight cap table and quite a concentrated shareholder group, including about over 30% of the company being held by employees and directors of the company. We've invested, we would say, over $500 million in building out this technology and platform, and have built a company of over 500 employees now, and are on track to have over 600,000 square feet of space, including lab, office, GMP, CMC, and GMP manufacturing space online by 2025. And that is where we are focusing our investments in the future. We're in a very strong liquidity position as we start or continue, let's say, that journey. Having spent $500 million on the platform already, we still have over $850 million in cash on our balance sheet. And as you pointed out, not only was the COVID program a great validation and proof point of the capabilities of the platform, it also was a very strong validation of the business model we've chosen, where we earned royalties on the sales of both bamlanivimab and bebtelovimab, as they treated over 2.5 million patients through the past number of years or a few years with COVID. As we were thinking about how we allocate that capital, we take this capability in the technology that we're building to market in three ways. The first is the one that maybe has been around for the longest and people are most familiar with, is through a straight partnership business. So this is where we are discovering a partner will come to us with their insight into target biology, looking for an antibody that will bind to a certain target with certain functional characteristics and a certain drug profile. And we will perform and find that antibody in exchange for both upfront fees, milestones, and importantly, a royalty position on the success of that molecule. That is a larger volume play. We have negotiated close to over 160 programs under contract, and started the execution on well over 60 plus of those programs in terms of the ones that have downstream participation, and close to 100, including all the programs since the beginning of the company. And we will continue to do that business, and it is a very lucrative business, but it is very long. It's still drug development, so it's many years before those royalty streams would come. We also have a co-ownership and co-development way we bring the technology to market, where we own 50% or have a co-ownership position of a molecule and the right but not the obligation to co-invest as that molecule gets further through to clinical development. And last but not least, we also have what we call pre-partnered programs, which is a concept we've introduced over the course of the last year, which we really see as a technology development effort, where we are investing in, as I mentioned, the capability building. But when you're investing in the technology to break these barriers of conventional antibody discovery, to know you're succeeding, you have to be working on real things. So the happy benefit of success of the technology deployment are first-in-class assets against these targets that have been previously intractable by the legacy technologies that we would then intend to partner out for their development. And those assets, as I'm sure you're aware, can have quite significant near and midterm revenue potential, as well as lucrative, royalty potential, depending on the nature of the molecule or how difficult it is, the problem that has been solved. Typically, in this space, what we've talked about are the CD3 panel for T-cell engagers, the ion channels and GPCRs, these areas that have been proven very difficult, if not impossible, to find therapeutic antibodies against. And that is the way we take this technology platform to the market. And we have done so with close to 40 partners, 38 partners as of the end of the third quarter, which is our last reported quarter last year. And as I mentioned, started on over 90 programs. We've had over 90 program starts, 7 molecules that have been in the clinic. And we have initiated programs on 5 co-development molecules, as well as close to a dozen pre-partnered programs. And our partners, as you know, Puneet, are we have we're very proud of the number of partners that we have, both highly enabled pharma companies, as well as biotech, as well as very early stage VC companies that have recognized the capabilities we have and how they can play into their own portfolios. So that's kind of a general overview of the company, and then I'm happy to go into the kind of quick Q&A session from there.
That's great. No, thanks for that, Andrew. Maybe first one, how do you prioritize those 3 buckets? You have the partner, the co-development efforts, the pre-partner programs. How are you prioritizing that? And within that context, sort of how are you, prioritizing your, business development effort and the R&D capacity that's needed to sort of serve that those constituents?
Yeah, it's a great question, Puneet. As we mentioned, because we tie our ultimate financial success to the success of the molecule, we would say we're quite selective of the partners that we choose. We want to make sure we're dealing with groups that where we like the biology, we like the team, we know they're well capitalized, that they have the ability and the capability to advance this molecule through to the clinic and then ultimately to patients. And so when we're doing our business development efforts, we absolutely will do our own diligence and curation of the opportunities that we even will take a swing at. And we will see that I think you've probably noticed over the last couple of years us being very selective of the partners that we go to. But it is not a capacity limiting reason that we're doing that. It is really about curating the best opportunities that are out there with the molecules and partners that we're working with. We also spend about a third of our R&D capability on execution of, as you see in our P&L, a third of the R&D spend is about executing on programs, and typically programs with our partners. The other 2/3 is about platform building. So that is about the complex integration of the 1,000 things that need to go right in an end-to-end workflow, and looking holistically at developing not just individual pieces of technology, but actually developing lead candidates and drugs that can go into the market. So that includes the investments in technology and integration, as well as the vertical integration into translational sciences, CMC, and GMP. In addition, that complex integration is probably where we would count the efforts we have on what are the pre-partnered programs. So if we see out there a problem like CD3 engagement, CD3 antibodies for T-cell engagement, something where it has been limiting the progress of the field, the absence of a selection of or a panel of good CD3 engagers, we see that we can make a real difference there. That is where we would invest money in the pre-partner program to develop that panel, and also put in the efforts to validate our hypothesis that you can optimize the selection and pairing of both the CD3 engager and a tumor targeting antibody, and then publish the data that prove out that hypothesis. And that in the end, this is a very valuable thing that others can take, and we will partner out those CD3 antibodies for partners who are also advancing T-cell engaging therapies. So I think the summary of that is, I think we try to be quite thoughtful of really the highest opportunity cost deployment of capital, whether they're with partners, whether it's with co-investing, or whether it's with the pre-partnered efforts that we're putting in place.
Got it. Makes sense. We've been getting this question, obviously, sort of since late last year. Biotech funding exposure, biotech funding is tougher for smaller companies, as startups and other, biotechs that are trying to discover these molecules. talk to us about sort of your mix, how it is. You have had some larger partners that you've announced, but you obviously legacy. You were working with a number of these smaller biotechs. Maybe just talk to us a little bit about the mix you have today, and then what are you seeing in terms of the demand for discovery work and overall preclinical work from these biotech companies overall and the startups.
Yeah, I think I'll take the pharma partners first. So as you noticed, as you even said, we have a nice list of well-enabled pharma companies. They typically come to us when they're stuck and they believe that we have the technology and capability to help move along a program where presumably they have tried and failed. There's not so much the funding crunch within that sector of the market with the highly enabled groups. On the smaller scale groups, I think the biotech, generally speaking, the biotech market and the startup environment doesn't stop because of some of these macro changes. Some VCs, especially very highly regarded VCs, we did, as you may remember, we did some deals earlier this year with Versant and Atlas companies, where the VCs have really still seen some inflows of capital to deploy. I think they're being much more judicious about how they're deploying that capital. And if anything, I think that plays to our strengths of having this integrated offering that provides capital efficiency for the discovery efforts for those startup groups, where, with a handshake and a simple contract, especially if we have an existing relationship with some of those VC groups, we can get antibody discovery up and running extremely quickly for those groups. And I think that plays into our strengths that we can use during a tighter macro environment. We can continue to see those inflows from groups. It is really a matter of making sure we are picking our shots with those where we, again, like the target. We like the team. We like how they're capitalized and how they're funded. And we saw some of those deals in the last year. And I think we're going to continue to see those deals into 2023.
Okay. I'm getting a question here on COVID, but just before I jump into that, maybe just briefly on, the pre-partner programs that you have, CD3 engager, GPCRs that you talked about. I think you have 15 or so of those. How far into the clinical development are you taking these programs from a CFO point of view? What sort of OpEx is involved here? Bringing these, and how much can you go downstream into sort of development, and how are you bringing about the development partners here as well?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. So I think on the pre-partnered programs, what makes the most sense for us in terms of capital deployment is to use the technology and infrastructure and engine that we're building, which goes from the target to the drug product and the IND. It is not our intent, and along that, certainly at the lead, when we have let's say a lead candidate. And we have the ability to publish data, as we have done with CD3 engagers, and we have announced that we will be at AACR later this year to continue. The first time we published the CD3 engager panel was at last AACR, and then at SITC before Christmas, and then again increasingly showing the data that we have generated from that effort. That is in an attempt to and in an effort to look at partnering and doing a partnership deal with companies who are interested in the CD3 engagers. I think similarly with the ion channel and GPCR, the good thing about owning those efforts entirely is that we own the data and we can publish that data. I think we only would publish that data when we really have something to show. And in the ion channel GPCR case, for example, that would be when we have a lead clinical candidate and that we would want to show that we really have solved this problem, and we would publish the data. Publishing that data, of course, is probably also the announcement that we're looking for a partner where this molecule would be in the best hands to move forward into clinical development. But we still have the expectation that sales or business development process could still take some time, and we are not going to just put that molecule on the shelf during that time. We would continue to advance it further forward towards the clinic until such time that we have a transaction or a BD partner where we can put that molecule in the right hands. So I think we won't slow down the development. It is our intent to be moving. I don't think in anybody's interest, and we won't do a deal where we don't think we're being given the value that we believe we've created. But it would be our intent to try and partner it off so that it can get into someone who has a real angle on clinical development in order to pursue the phase 1 and beyond. But I don't think we have an issue with taking it all the way to the IND package. Those are the capabilities that we are building, and it might even be disruptive for the program to move it midstream. Probably makes much more sense to continue with our capabilities as we advance it. To be clear, we don't have all of those forward integration capabilities within the company's walls today. Those are the capabilities we're building between now and 2024, 2025.
I see. Okay, that's helpful context. On COVID, if I could ask the next generation antibody, what's the latest there, and any updates from Lilly, and how are you guys thinking about moving that forward?
Yeah, excellent question, Puneet. For those, just to recap, when COVID hit in February or early March of 2020, we were we've developed with our partner Lilly bamlanivimab. It went from the start of our initiation of our program to dosing a patient in 90 days, I think a world record. And we were solving with that discovery effort for speed, trying to get something to patients as quickly as possible. And also with potency, bamlanivimab was a very potent antibody that then got emergency use authorization in 6 months later after hitting the clinic. Went on to treat a number of patients, but was susceptible to the issues with variants. At the time when we were looking for bamlanivimab, we weren't aware of variants. It was really about speed and getting something to the clinic. But we started up the discovery efforts again, looking for a potent and broadly neutralizing antibody, which, as you know, became bebtelovimab. It was the last antibody standing against Omicron and went to the benefit of many patients in 2022. When BQ1 and BQ1.1 variants emerged, it also kicked off and compromised the potency of bebtelovimab. We didn't stop during that, anticipating there would be others. We advanced more molecules with our partner Lilly, including one that was potently neutralizing and continues to be potently neutralizing against all known variants of concern. It is in the hands of Lilly, but what is, as they have stated on their earnings call, and I believe we have too, what is unclear is what the regulatory framework is to get an emergency use authorization, if that avenue is still even open with the FDA for therapeutic antibodies. There is absolutely still the patient need, and I think we see that and Lilly sees that, and we stand at the ready to bring that molecule forward to patients when the FDA will outline what the regulatory pathway is in order to do so. And I think we still are in that pattern. It's in the hands of Eli Lilly and their discussions with the FDA to determine what the next steps are. But we stand at the ready to move that one forward or subsequent ones should a regulatory framework exist that would bring that maybe even seasonally to a real patient need, especially for immune compromised patients while COVID is endemic.
Got it. That's helpful. But I want to come back to the core business. When you look at the sort of new contract ads, they were strong in 2021. Now your focus has been more on the new program starts and the number of programs you have ongoing currently. Maybe just talk about, sort of when do we start to see new contract additions, how much of a priority that is sort of, longer term, or is it the way you're describing those three buckets? Are the hands full with those, three buckets that new contracts that might take some time?
Yeah, no, in 2021, as you pointed out, was a particularly strong year on new contracts. And I think what you mean there is programs under contract, because in 2021, we were doing several multi-year, multi-target deals where the partner probably had the target understood and was ready to call maybe the first two or maybe three targets and initiate those programs. But we would sign up to a 10-target deal. We later realized that was probably, while we're adding capabilities, our terms are increasing. It doesn't make any sense for us to lock ourselves into the economics of a 10-target deal. It's probably much more strategic to do a 3 or 4-target deal, knowing that a partner has probably only got 2 or 3 targets that are ready to go, where we've seen the target, the statement of work, we've already worked out, we've had the R&D discussions. So the shift in business development was towards doing smaller deals, 4-target deals rather than 10-target deals, and being very judicious about the partners that we choose. And I think we executed on that and let the market know in advance that we were making that shift in the nature of how we're doing those transactions. It does not mean we have still been investing in our business development effort, growing that team, increasing our presence at conferences and geographically, and we'll continue to do those types of deals. In the last quarter, I think you noticed we did a deal with Rally Bio. We had a press release on that for a multi-target 4-target deal, I believe. A great addition to the portfolio in the orphan disease space with a highly experienced team, and it is in the co-development bucket of the partnership. And as well, a very nice deal as well, a 5-target deal with AbbVie, a highly enabled company, which is of course in the standard partnership deal where we are doing discovery for them. But smaller deals, and I think we've seen very nice deal flow through 2022, and I think we're going to continue to see that kind of deal flow going forward. Okay,
that's helpful perspective. Let me ask you from the CFO seat, GMP manufacturing facility. Could you update us on the capex expectations there, timelines, and how do you plan to utilize that facility? How it adds to your, capabilities of already, the tech stack that you have already in place?
Absolutely, great question. Again, our investments here are from target to drug product and an IND and ready to go into the clinic. That necessitates an integration of the CMC and GMP capabilities. The GMP capabilities specifically, as you rightly point out, is a large capital investment. As you know, we were successful in negotiating a 50-50 co-funding agreement with the Government of Canada, where they will be co-funding to the tune of $110 million Canadian, that effort. And that is roughly, and then we of course are co-funding similarly the amount, but it is in the land and the building as well as the equipment and the capabilities and and running the qualification batches, et cetera, in that facility. We have said for a couple of years our target was to be producing the first batch in that facility in 2024. We are still on track to be able to do that. Late 2024 is when we would anticipate kind of our pilot and qualification batch, and commercial batches would be in the 2025 timeframe. What that does mean on terms of the timeframe is that sometime in 2023, you can imagine we would be initiating the discovery efforts on a program where the timing would line up, that they could be candidates to be some of those first batches through the CMC and our own integrated CMC and GMP capabilities as those capabilities start coming online. I think that investment is unique out there in that fully integrated approach with best in world capabilities and best technology that we have integrated from target to the clinic. And I think many people see the value of having that integrated approach. And that is the timeline we're on. And of course, while we're doing those, they will be, you can imagine that our pre-partnered programs will be candidates for that. Our co-development programs are obvious candidates for that, and even potentially some of our partnered programs. So we don't see any problem with the feeding what the programs are going to be, that is going to be keeping that facility busy.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm getting a question here on the guide side of things. So just at a high level, I mean, with COVID contribution now stabilizing, I mean, do you think you can start to provide some metrics around your expectations for full year in the core business? And I understand these programs are hard to project, but what can you start to provide us that gives us more visibility going into 23 and 24?
Yeah, I think we. As Lilly is doing, we are guiding to not have any COVID-related revenues. That's not to say they won't happen. Like I mentioned, I'm glad we already talked about it. It's in the hands of the FDA as to whether there will be future revenues from COVID antibodies from Lilly, and we stand at the ready to put our shoulder to that. We would expect in 2023, as we are not going to have Lilly COVID revenues, that while we have been profitable in the years in the past, that we would not expect to maintain that in the future, given the fact that we have a heavy technology investment, but also that we have a lot of liquidity which is intended to be deployed on these technology investments. Whether we will be providing the outright guidance, that will have to be something for a later time. You can see our steady increase in expenditure in R&D and sales and marketing. A lot of those are probably quite predictable and forecastable by yourselves and our analysts. And it has been quite steady. I think we will continue to increase our investment there, but not at the same pace as we have increased it in the past, as we have done quite a significant build over the last 2 or 3 years to get us up to the 500 or so people today. That will probably be not at the same rate of increase year over year, and that will stabilize through 2023, and you'll probably be able to guess where the trajectory would be for years following that as we start to report our results through the quarters in 2023.
Okay. A quick clarification question. Are you seeing from your seat sort of the rising inflation? I'm hearing from a number of companies that provide research products into research. I mean, they've been raising prices, obviously. So does that come into play as you're scaling up?
I think in any technology company that's investing, the number one expense is always in your people and in investment in your people. I think we haven't seen material increase in or that impacts holistically the P&L and the activities on the materials that are going into R&D. I think we've seen some inflation in on the facility build related to the capex, but thus far with the contingency we planned for, I think we're still in great shape to be ending that project on plan and with the co-funding from the government of Canada. I think it's definitely something we keep our eye on. At the moment, with our large cash balance, it also means that we have other probably unexpected from a year or so ago interest income relating to that the treasury solutions we have from our cash balance. That is at least more than compensating for any increases we might see in materials cost within the business.
Super. Let me, on that point of cash position that you have, just talk to us about sort of priority stack. Do you have the things that you need and then the technology stack to from Carl's perspective, what he would like to have more in the technology stack? How well you're positioned there?
Sorry, Puneet, you cut out there for just quickly. You said
just last question is on technology stack investments. What are priorities?
Yeah, I think the organic growth of the integration of the technology and the entire platform and engine, as we like to call it. I think over the last number of years, we've done 4 acquisitions at different areas of the technology or in the workflow, repertoire sequencing, duologics for a multi-specific antibody platform that's clinically validated, our own humanized rodent, proprietary humanized rodent platform, and tetragenetics, which was for the antigen generation for difficult targets. the common element between those is very, a technology on its own is not a business, but integrated into our workflow can actually add a lot of value. And as we remove bottlenecks along the workflow, we're the first to see where the next bottlenecks are, especially when we look at the difficult target space. So we'll keep our eye out, but probably any inorganic activity would have a very similar flavor, very specific technology that solves a problem in building out the technology platform and engine to solve these difficult problems specifically. I think we always are keeping our eye out there for that. There's nothing we say we absolutely need in order to execute on what we're doing, but we'll always keep our eye out.